Leeds United have a few more bits of business left to do in this transfer window, with a potential left-back on the way, with a potential striker/number 10 on the way, rumours floating about around God knows what position, but one of the roles that Leeds United need to fill just as much as any other is the backup goalkeeper, and we've had a fairly significant little bit of news on the backup goalkeeper story because a big name has been mentioned and it seems potentially likely that Leeds might make a move to sign him, but it's dependent on a lot of dominoes falling in the right direction, and I will be honest with you, I'm not entirely sure that he'd be the right move for Leeds right now. So in this video I'm going to talk through who it is, the sort of situation around them and what would potentially trigger a move to Leeds, and ultimately why I really don't think that this is the best move. So the main bit of this news has come from, if I can find the guy's name, there it is, Christopher Michel, who is a Eintracht Frankfurt kind of journalist guy who focuses on that club significantly more than anyone else. And he has been talking about Michael Zetter, who is a goalkeeper that is currently playing at Eintracht Frankfurt, got 20-something appearances in the league last season and played a fairly significant part for them. And as is said in the article that he wrote, Eintracht Frankfurt goalkeeper Michael Zetter has reportedly attracted interest from Leeds United. We've made an inquiry about the 31-year-old German goalkeeper. We've got Daniel Farke at the helm. He could potentially replace Lucas Perry in the sort of second option list. But according to this report, this is where things start to trip up a little bit and get very, very tricky. The goalkeeper currently has no intention of leaving Eintracht Frankfurt. He believes he's got a good chance of getting that number one spot from a guy called Caio Santos, who is a 23-year-old Brazilian goalkeeper also at Frankfurt. They've been fighting for the number one spot for a while now, and it makes things a little bit interesting. However, this is where things get a bit tough and where Leeds United could see an opportunity to ultimately land this guy. Because there was a goalkeeper that I was personally keeping a little bit of an eye on early in the transfer window before I genuinely thought James Trafford was an option. And he's someone that had set the Bundesliga alight last season. It was Noah Achibolu, who is a fantastic goalkeeper. Brilliant shot stopper, decent distribution, fantastic player. He is potentially on the move right now, with Freiburg looking at a sale for about 15 million euros. Of course, he wouldn't come to Leeds United, because obviously he wouldn't come to Leeds United right now because he would be a number two option. However, there is a fairly significant chance he goes to Eintracht Frankfurt. In the event that Eintracht Frankfurt were to sign a number one goalkeeper, I feel like Michael Zetter would look at that situation and go, oh, so my attempt at being the number one goalkeeper has very obviously not worked. So that would be the route to Leeds United eventually signing Zetter, who is sort of the right kind of profile that we're looking for. He is that player who is an older goalkeeper who has a little bit of hunger about him and wants to play a little bit of football, but at the same time would probably be fine enough playing fewer minutes if they were able to increase their profile, get a decent payday out of it, all this kind of stuff. At the end of the day, he didn't play a full season last year either, which sort of begins to indicate that he's happy enough being in a squad and missing out on minutes. In the event that Achibolu were to join, that effectively tells him you will not be the number one goalkeeper. You might get some minutes in the cup. If Achibolu gets injured, then you might be the sort of first choice replacement, but between 23-year-old up-and-coming goalkeeper, I've completely forgotten his name, that's the one, Caio Santos, or Michael Zetter, who is significantly older and doesn't quite have the potential to grow and become a more valuable asset, you 100% see why Eintracht Frankfurt would probably push Zetter out of the door between the two, especially if a Premier League club comes sniffing around. In terms of the amount that Leeds United could probably expect to spend, this is where it gets a little bit complicated, because goalkeepers are already very, very difficult to work out the value of. Because a few years ago, I wouldn't have thought that we would have gotten Carl Darlow for about £200,000, and then we did. And at the same time, you wouldn't expect, I don't know, I'm trying to pick other goalkeepers that have moved. I wouldn't have thought Achibolu would move for 15 million euros, for example. But that's the price tag that's been put on him by... Where the hell is he now? Hold on, I've completely forgotten and missed that one. There we go, Freiburg. I knew it was Freiburg. Freiburg and Frankfurt, it makes things very, very confused. So it's tough. Transfermarkt has his value at the moment at about 4 million euros, which is I would say a little bit higher than we would necessarily want to spend in that situation. We don't really want to throw that much money at a backup goalkeeper because at the end of the day, they're not going to play much. You don't want to sign someone for €4 million for 2 years and then they play a match in the League Cup and the FA Cup each season. We lose those matches and well done, you've paid €1 million per appearance. But it's not just the potential one-off costs that makes me a little bit unexcited by this potential move. The aspect of it that I dislike the most is the fact that the sort of backup goalkeeper position isn't one that you use at all, really. The amount of times that your backup goalkeeper is going to play in the league is very, very minimal, which is completely fine, but it also means that you can use that part of your squad for other purposes, which is why a hell of a lot of teams have older English goalkeepers that are a little bit past it at this point to sort of fill out the squad's requirements, to fill out the fact that you need a set number of homegrown players. Leeds United this season will need 8 homegrown players, which means that they had to have trained between the ages of 18 and 21. No, hold on. They need to have trained before the age of 21 for 3 years in, I believe it's England and Wales, because I don't know if the Scottish FA applies, but that's the general gist. They need to be from clubs in England or Wales, potentially Scotland. I don't remember the specific wording of the rule, but you get what I mean. And this is a place that Zetter doesn't quite fill that in. We've already lost a homegrown player in Pascal Struijk in this window. We have already lost another homegrown player in the form of Caldalo in this window. And I feel like just leaking homegrown footballers without replacing them in the positions where they are most easily replaced is a little bit of a daft one, to be honest with you. It means that we're maybe a little bit less flexible when we're recruiting for other positions. I think we are probably fine in terms of homegrown recruits, but the mix of factors between we can use that position more strategically, in addition to the fact that we can use that money more strategically if it does turn out to be €4 million, really puts me off this potential move. At the end of the day, we could spend £500,000 on an English goalkeeper that is probably a little bit past it, fine, but goalkeeps at a reasonable enough standard, like we did with Caldalo, and does a job, as opposed to someone that is currently fighting for a first choice spot in a Bundesliga side, and this way we can reallocate the money that we were going to spend on Zetter towards that backup left back that we quite badly need, towards making sure that we can bid what we need to for that number 9/number 10. We're getting to that part of the transfer window where all of the decisions that we make, and I admit I'm also doing this, but every single decision that we make will be overanalyzed by absolutely everybody, because that's what we do, because that's what happens in the age of the internet. Everyone has access to all of the information, therefore passes through it incredibly quickly. That's with an R, I'm not just turning southern and going passes. Passes all of that data incredibly quickly and goes, this is my snap judgment. But at the end of the day, that's what we all do. So, for me, Zetter, probably a great goalkeeper. Not got a problem with him in terms of ability, but everything surrounding him worries me a little bit. Before I close out, I'm just going to also have a little bit of a similar related chat on the Max Aaron stuff, because I think there's something worth a little bit of a mention with him. Because a lot of people have discussed Max Aaron as a player that Leeds United will potentially want to sign, because he can play at right back, he can play at left back, and that's absolutely wonderful. However, slight concern that I just want to bring up in terms of the strategy behind signing him is that we tend to like having a decent balance of left and right-footed players. Yes, he can play at left back, but he's right-footed, which means that he's sort of going to have to cut back on himself to put the right kind of ball in, which isn't exactly what you want from a wing-back, especially when your winger on that side is also right-footed and likes to cut inside onto their right foot like Noah Okafor. If you had a left-footed winger, it would make a lot more sense, but we don't in that position at the moment, so Aaron's is one to potentially watch. He would be a decent signing, but I still think we could do a little bit more looking, find a left-footed wing-back to do that job. Although, on that note, Max Aaron's homegrown player, cracking. That solves that one. But I think there are better options, and going for those better options would be absolutely lovely. Anyway, I'm going to leave that video there. If you enjoyed, please pop a like in it. It got a little bit rambly at points, but that's fine. I will be honest, I have played 7-a-side in the pissing rain tonight. We won 9-1 though, so that was quite fun. But hope you all enjoyed. Like, subscribe, all that shebang, and I will see you all later. Toodaloo, mi amigo.